In this section, I want to discuss non-parametric tests. Now, we've seen a lot of tests up until now. We've seen all the various t-tests for 2 groups. We've seen ANOVA for more than 2 groups, linear regression. All of these tests are very common in the literature, but they are what we call parametric tests. And really, to use a parametric test, as all those t-tests, you need the population parameter to be normally distributed. Now, think about it this way, for instance. Imagine I have 2 groups of patients, group A, group B. One has got early appendicitis, the other group's got perforated appendicitis. And I take sample data for white cell count from each of those groups. Now remember, I've got my sample data for white cell count. Now, the population in this group refers to everyone out there with early acute appendicitis. I have a sample of that population, and my parameter or my statistic here that we're talking about is my white cell count. That's my variable. On the other hand, I have perforated appendicitis. My sample data of white cell count, but there's a population out there, millions with perforated appendicitis. Now, what I want to do with my t-test is to see if my 2 sample sets are from different populations. How likely is it that those are 2 different populations? And I do those analysis from my t-test, for instance. But that would posit the fact that my white cell count data for the population out there with early appendicitis, that white cell count has a normal distribution in that population, and my white cell count in the population out there with perforated appendicitis has a normal distribution as well. If that is not so, if it is not from a normally distributed distribution pattern, if I can use that word, then I cannot use a normal parametric test like a t-test. Then I have to move on to use a non-parametric t-test. And I think very often we do find in the literature that a t-test was used, and if we had access to the data, we might look at the fact that it wasn't that appropriate to use a parametric test. Now, there's one other place to use a non-parametric test, of course, and that is when we're dealing with categorical data. With the proviso that it is an ordinal type of categorical data. You've got to be able to order it in some way, because ordering plays a big role in the use of non-parametric tests. Remember, the ordinal data, I have to be able to put it in some order. If someone chose they agreed or strongly disagreed, there is some order to that. If someone gave a 5-star rating versus a 3-star rating, if someone chose 9 on a pain scale versus 5 on a pain scale, there's some order to that. I can use all my non-parametric tests for that kind of analysis as well.